Hey there everyone, Icy here. I just wanted to take a moment while I was down trackside to talk to everyone about some of the changes we've got going on here for Ottercar season number 3 before we get cars on track to kick off this qualifying session here today. Of course, I guess I should introduce myself first. Hello, I'm Icy. I'm the person who makes all the videos here on these channels. I do all the broadcasting work and all of that stuff that goes on here. And of course, normally they keep me locked up there in the broadcast booth and they don't really ever let me come down here and show up on camera. So I wanted to take this moment to say hello and thank you all for tuning in and supporting all of these races that I get the opportunity to do. It's been a while the last couple of years ever since I started doing these, just kind of on a whim. And of course, now we're here all the way near the end of 2024, and we're doing even more than we've ever done before here on this channel. Now, going into the things we have going on here, specifically in Ottercar season number 3, probably the biggest change that y'all have already noticed here from the title and the thumbnail is that this isn't just the Ottercar AI Racing series anymore. It has now been sort of rebranded into the Ottercar Clamshell Championship. And that goes both for this season that we have starting off here today and for the previous 2 seasons of Ottercar competition. All of that has been wrapped up here now into the Ottercar Clamshell Championship. And the reason that we've decided to do that is to kind of open up the door to do more experimental and different series along with the mainline Ottercar Clamshell Championship series. Of course, we had the New Mons Daytona 2.4 special event earlier on this year. That's hopefully going to be the first of many different special events here under the Ottercar banner. And of course, I have some ideas for different little, maybe mini series, along with other full series that will run alongside the Clamshell Championship in the future. But the Clamshell Championship is still going to be the mainline Ottercar series where we put all of the months of effort and prep work into making everyone a custom car paint. I even did custom pit boxes for everyone here this season, and so this is where the main sort of focus and effort is going to lie here, is in the Clamshell Championship. And of course, this season we have 33 drivers, the biggest the Ottercar Racing Series has ever been before. And along with that, we have, I want to say, 15 different teams competing, up from 4 that we had last season. So this by far is going to be the biggest and best season that Ottercar has ever seen. Along with that, we're also going to be having a bit of a different coat of paint here on the races. Obviously, this is not the format that we're going to be racing with. This is not the platform that we are racing on. This isn't even a racing game here. But this season we are going to be doing things in NR 2003 rather than on iRacing. And the main reason for that change was just the NR 2003 AI are a lot more customizable. There's a lot more depth in how you can set them up, what you can do with them, and this also opens up the possibility for mod support further down the road. Now, of course, that's not to say that iRacing is entirely out of the picture. Of course, we had New Mons earlier this year. That was done on iRacing. We are still going to be doing plenty of iRacing Ottercar related content. And of course, I'm still continuing to broadcast the real human-driven leagues that are on the iRacing.com platform that I broadcast for every week. But of course, NR 2003, it's a bit of an older game. We're having to do things a lot differently than we did in the past for Ottercar, just because it's such a different game. A lot of the tools I had at my disposal for my broadcasts in iRacing are just not a thing in this game. So it's going to be a little janky, it's going to be a little old school, but I think it's still going to be putting on a lot of really exciting racing action here. Now getting a little bit further into what we're going to be seeing here today, of course, a lot of folks who tune into the Ottercar AI Racing broadcast and the folks who compete in it don't really watch a whole lot of motorsports here. Of course, that's just kind of a sweeping generalization. There are some motorsports fans here in the Ottercar AI Racing driver ranks. There are actually a few Ottercar drivers that actually race on iRacing as well, so it's not really fair for me to say that for everyone. But just for the folks who tune in and don't really watch a whole lot of real-life racing, we're going to be doing single car qualifying for every race here this season, and of course this video is going to be single car qualifying for today's race at New Hampshire, the Suncook Lake 100. The way single car qualifying is going to be working here pretty much is each driver gets the track entirely to themselves It starts off with pretty much the first lap is there to get the cars up to speed, get the tires up at temperature, get everything ready to go. The second lap is where we're going to actually be measuring the lap time of the driver. The lap time, fastest lap starts first place, so on and so forth. It's pretty much self-explanatory. So we're going to be going through all 33 drivers to get their lap times, and that will be setting the starting order for the Suncook 100 later today. Now for today's race, the starting order for who's actually coming out onto the track to qualify is going to be just completely random. I believe that Mint_777 is going to be the driver starting us off here today, and he is actually a rookie driver making his debut with the league here, so congratulations to him for having the honor of turning the very first Ottercar Season 3 lap on track. But in future races, the qualifying order will be determined by inverting the race results from the previous race. So say Felix Marais, secret hint hint, that is my self-insert driver, so let's actually hope he doesn't win a race. But let's say Felix Marais, he finishes last in today's race. That means he'll be the first car on track to qualify for next round's qualifying event. Of course, every driver gets a completely fresh track state, so the actual order that the cars come out on track to qualify doesn't really matter at all. But of course, for folks tuning in who want to see their favorite drivers and see how they do, it will be helpful to keep that in mind just to know where your driver might be starting off at to run their qualifying lap. Before we get into the race, I'm almost done rambling, I promise, but the other thing I want to bring up is that the qualifying session for today's race was recorded at 3 a.m. immediately after a long work shift. I say a lot of things wrong during the commentary. I make a lot of mistakes during it. I pretty much just wasn't really thinking things through, but pretty much just pay attention to the timing and scoring tower that will be up on the screen. All of that is correct. If I say something that doesn't make a lot of sense or just doesn't sound right, you're probably right that it's wrong. Just pay attention to the timing and scoring screen. That is what has the actually correct information on it. Now that said, I'm going to shut up. I'm going to go up to the broadcast booth and get off the camera so that we can actually look at all of the cars that we came down here to look at. But for now, thank you all for tuning in, and we'll go ahead and start getting things rolling here for the qualifying for the Suncook Lake 100. Have a good one. Alrighty, getting underway with our first qualifier here. That is going to be Mint_777 in the Northrop Grumman 777 entry. Making their first start here in the Ottercar AI Racing Series, or at least here in the Clamshell Championship. They did make an appearance down in the Mustelli Mons special event that we held a couple of months ago, but this is their first time out here running in a stock car, and of course going to be our first driver qualifying here. The pressure's kind of on to set a good time, because who knows if it's going to last for the other 32 drivers that will be coming after the 777 entry here. But so far, looking pretty good around the speedway, getting up to about, looking like about 151, I think is where he capped out, going down the back straightaway there. Making his way through the corners, dipping just below 100 miles per hour, comes back down across the start-finish line, and that is going to be a 31.177 for our first qualifying driver here of the evening. Alrighty, now rolling out of pit lane, going to be our second driver in the qualifying lineup. That is going to be the 330 entry of Lake. This driver has been here running with Ottercar for all 3 seasons of competition now, and as a matter of fact, she's actually been running pretty much the same paint scheme for all 3 seasons, has taken home a couple of wins here in the league, took home a few back in season number 1, back in the Tour Modifieds. I don't think she got any in season 2 in the late models, but I may be mistaken on that. But great to see her back out here on the speedway. She did describe her racing line as being mid though, which does scare me here a little bit. Did look like she was carrying a little bit more speed than Mint did down into turns 1 and 2 though, so we'll see how she manages to fare here coming through the back straightaway, getting up to, once again, right around 151 on corner entry. So it's going to be really close here between her and Mint underscore 777. But coming out of turn number 4, that is going to be a lap time of 31.293, so not quite going to be close enough to take the pole position away from Mint, but we'll see how that shakes up compared to the rest of the field in the rest of this qualifying rundown. And our third driver making her way out onto the speedway here, going to be the 666 entry of Zoe here, who, like Lake previously, is another full-time Ottercar Clamshell Championship driver, has been here all the way since Season 1, and like Lake has also been running the exact same paint scheme that she has been running since Season number 1, regardless of what car we throw her into. Still manages to find a way to throw that same paint scheme on it. Zoe is a driver that really had kind of a comically bad season last season, but she did still make it into the Clamshell Championship playoffs. She was the only driver that made it into the playoffs that was locked in off of a win that otherwise would have not had nowhere near enough points, to get into the playoffs. So consider her a little bit of a Harrison Burton last season, but we'll see what she was able to do here in Ottercar Clamshell Championship season number 3. And coming out of turn number 4, we're going to see what sort of lap time she manages to put down here. Going to be a 31.231. That will be just enough for her to bump Lake out of the second position. And next driver rolling off here is going to be that number 18 machine of another rookie driver starting their debut here in the Clamshell Championship this season. That is going to be Mr. Sam Houston down there in that 18 machine, driver out of the city, state, and country of Texas. Though we do hear he might have some affiliations with the drivers of old, such as Pete Comedy and Chris Cox from the last 2 seasons. So honestly, I think everyone might be a little bit afraid of what this driver ends up bringing out onto the speedway here in these 12 weeks of competition. But of course, it all starts here with the qualifying for the Suncook Lake 100, so we'll see what this 18 machine is able to put off and see if he can make himself a bit of a threat here in the series in the early goings of things. Heading down the back straightaway once again. Oh, nope, going to hit 152. I believe that's the first time we've seen a driver reach 152 going down into turn number 3 and 4, so this might be a pretty promising lap here, provided he can get a good exit out of turn number 4. Coming across the start-finish line, that is going to be a 31.123, just barely shy of setting pole here. Next driver making their way out onto the speedway, another brand new rookie driver here to the Ottercar Clamshell Championship. Running down in the Crown Royal number 48, that is going to be Prince Kilfame, making their first ever start here in Ottercar. Definitely going to be interested to see how this rookie driver brings it out here. Is affiliated with the 111, we'll see later on here, of Ash Ahmadi, who is a longtime driver here in the league. The two of them decided to form a team together for the Newport Dual Disc Racing team. Curious to see how the two of them managed to shake things out together here this season. A rookie driver paired up together with a long-standing series veteran, another driver that does have wins to their name. So who knows, maybe that mentoring will rub off on that number 48 and we will see this brand new driver take home some solid finishes here in the Ottercar Clamshell Championship. But already heading out of turn number 4, look like maybe a little bit slow through the corner, but we'll see how things shake up when they cross the line here. Going to be a 31.380, so for the time being, that will be putting Prince Kelfame down to the bottom of the qualifying order. With still a long way left to go here, so who knows, we might see them still hold on to maybe even a top 5 qualifying order here. And our next driver making their way out onto the speedway now, that is the blank car of the drop table roster. For timing and scoring purposes, he will be referred to as the 369, but is actually the only numberless car out here on the speedway. And this guy, quite frankly, we don't know how to get rid out of him. He keeps showing up without any sort of authorization. He's not signing up for the league. He's just kind of manifesting here at the Speedway. We're trying to figure out how it happens, and so far no one has a clue where this guy comes from or how he manages to get into the track through security. But he's out here on the raceway once again. He's been running here ever since Ottercar's Clamshell Championship was founded, and still no one understands or really even comprehends the enigma that is Drop Table Roster. But he's running his way down the back straightaway here. Not a super great entry down into the corner. He did have some solid speed going down in there, but a little bit of a slide for him. So we'll see how he manages to shake things off coming out of the corner and across the finish line. Looks like it is going to be a 3:31.166 for this driver. So that will be just enough to put him in third for the time being. And next up to qualify, going to be the number 0 of Ame Sacramore in the hybrid development team entry. Another longtime veteran here of the Ottercar Clamshell Championship. Great to see it returning to the field here this season. It had a bit of a struggle in season number 1 in the short track series in those tour modifieds, but when we switched over to the road racing series in season 2 in the super late models, it managed to make itself all the way up into the round of 8 of the playoffs before unfortunately being unlimited. So it'll definitely be interesting to see where it manages to place itself here in this season, running in these slightly more late model-esque cars. Of course, these NASCAR cars are a bit different, a bit more geared for the bigger speedways than what we saw in those late model entries, but who knows? It managed to get into the playoffs last season. We'll see if it manages to get into the playoffs again here in season number 3. But of course, the first thing we need to see is how is it going to be starting here for the Suncook Lake 100. Crossing the line going to be a 31.174. That is going to be good enough for fourth for the time being, and that'll be bumping Zoe Lake and Prince Kelfalme down another position here. Our next driver rolling off here going to be the Tiger Conservation Campaign number 24 of IceyToo, a rookie driver here making their debut in the Ottercar Clamshell Championship here this season. Wife of a longtime driver here, that is Frosty Film, who is now entered in here as Frosty C. The two of them together forming Dorian Motorsports here this season. Both of them running cars focused on our environmental conversation. Conservation here. Of course, Ikla down here in this Tiger Campaign conservation entry, and then Frosty C running in a oceanic conservation car. So Dorian Motorsports running out here, burning a whole lot of gasoline in the name of the environment. We'll see how that works out for these two Dorian Motorsports drivers here in qualifying. IceyToo getting ready to complete her first lap here in the Ottercar Clamshell Championship, and it's looking like it's going to be coming out to a 31.332 for their qualifying run. That's only going to be good enough for 6th for the time being. Rolling out here now, going to be the number 3 of thirds here onto the Speedway. Running in a Paizo entry this season, brand new paint scheme for the driver of that number 3 machine. Longtime veteran here with the Ottercar Clamshell Championship. Had a fairly quiet run in season number 1, but in season number 2 was the most dominant driver by a substantial margin. Had an absolutely ridiculous points lead by somewhere in the double digits over the entire rest of the field. Led laps in the championship race at Sebring, and then unfortunately ended up wrecking out under caution at that. Got terminal damage in the early goings of the race, and that dashed her championship hopes. But at the same time, she managed to bring it home 3rd overall in the championship, and considering her overall affiliation with the number 3, that was good enough for her. Who knows, maybe she'll get lucky here in qualifying and take home the 3rd position on the leaderboard. We'll see how things shake up as she comes across the line here. Going to be a 31.053. Not quite going to be 3rd for her, but that will be good enough to take the pole here at New Hampshire. Of course, still got another, call it about 20-ish more cars to go, so we'll see how things shake out here for the rest of the field. Next driver making her way out, that is going to be the number 88 of Ashley in the VR chat car, making her second debut here in the Ottercar Clamshell Championship. Started off back in season number 2, managed to race her way into the playoffs, but unfortunately was eliminated in the first round. Here to try and make a little bit of a better run here in Ottercar's season number 3 of the Clamshell Championship, running the same paint scheme she ran on the Super Late model last season. And of course, a lot of the drivers remember this 88 from doing a bit of a secret shortcut at Olton Park that really should not have been allowed, but somehow it was. We'll see if this driver has any more tricks up her sleeve here this season. And of course, gotta remember here that Ashley is in the 88 because she is not to be confused with Ashley Queen in the 37, or the 2 other drivers named Ash here in this league. It's a lot to take in, but I'm sure by the end of the season, we'll all be able to remember it. It's going to be a 31.039 for that 88 of Ashley. That is going to be enough to knock thirds out of the pole as soon as she grabbed it. Next driver coming out here onto the speedway is going to be the 12 of Pav here in a brand new paint scheme this season, running in a Void Stranger livery here this time around. Still running his signature colors though. Of course, all of his paint schemes emphasize a lot of red here in the Ottercar Clamshell Championship, but a new look for this driver. We'll see if it brings him any better luck here this season. Of course, Pav been here since the beginning, along with a lot of the other drivers here in the Ottercar Clamshell Championship. Took home 1 win so far in the last 2 seasons. It was not enough to get him into the playoffs, but he did take home a win at the very end of last season, and he also was the winner in the GTE class for the first ever Ottercar special event, the Mustelli Mons Daytona 2.4. Of course, these NASCAR Cup cars are way different than the GTE car that he took home that win in, but we'll see how this driver shakes out here in Ottercar season number 3. So far, looking like he is going to be qualifying with a 31.068. That is going to be just enough for third right now on the starting order. Next up here on the speedway is going to be the 26 Silphco entry of Rally, the other half of the hybrid development team crew. Driver that has been here since season number 2 and rocking the same paint scheme that it used last season as well. Didn't have quite as good of a run as its teammate Avame Sacramore did last season, but here in season number 3, it's a brand new start, a completely clean slate for these drivers to try and cut their teeth and get a little bit of a better result maybe than last season. But of course, the field has expanded from 26 cars to 33, with a couple of part-time drivers making appearances later in the season as well. So it's going to be just that much harder to make a name for yourself here in the Clamshell Championship, but who knows? We'll see how these long-standing veterans manage to shake off against the rookie drivers here. Heading here through turns 3 and 4, going to be crossing the line here, and it is going to be a 31.186 for Rally. That is going to only be good enough for, looks like, the 8th position, and that will actually be putting it right behind its teammate of Ame Sacramore. Next driver coming out here onto the speedway, going to be the Save RC's Foundation number 7 of Frosty C, the other half of the Dorian Motorsports racing team, and of course, husband of IceyToo. Driver that has a bit of history here in the league. Of course, another full-time runner here in Ottercar's Clamshell Championship. Took home the win in the very first ever Ottercar Clamshell Championship race back at the Hickory Motor Speedway, but had a bit of a quiet season in Ottercar season number 2. We'll see if they get that spark back here in season number 3 and really let themselves shine here for Dorian Motorsports. So far, looking pretty solid here around the track. We'll see what sort of top speeds they're able to hit here in that number 7 machine. Looking like all the way up to 152. I might have seen a flash of 153 there, but not quite sure on that. Who knows, though? We'll see how they come out of turn number 4 here. Coming across the start-finish line at, looks like, 143. That's going to be a 30.992. That is, once again, going to be knocking the whole field down a peg, as Frosty C is our new front runner. As our next driver makes their way out onto the speedway, I do want to emphasize that I might have misspoke with the previous time. It was a 30.922, not a 992. Good rule of thumb, go with what the information says on the screen, not what comes out of my mouth, because Lord knows I do not know how to talk here in these races. But regardless, next driver out on the track is going to be a rookie driver here this season. That is going to be Dirt down there in the Lynx Salvage number 8. One of the 2 drivers running for Fendragon Motorsports here this season. Curious to see how these 2 drivers shake up. Dirt's teammate of Ash did run here in the previous 2 seasons of Ottercar, but were unaffiliated with a team both times, so definitely interesting to see them decide to partner up here in season number 3. And something really interesting to see here as well here in season number 3 is that we have a grand total of, I believe, 16 different teams competing this season in the team championship after having only just 3 in the previous 2 seasons. Coming across the line, though, Dirt is going to be taking it home with a 31.034. That will be enough to put him up in second for the time being. A really strong start for this rookie driver and this rookie team. 15th driver going to be trying their luck here in qualifying, going to be the Windows 98 entry of Clip It, the final driver of the 32 characters or less team trying to make their qualifying run here this season, and the only rookie member of the 32 characters or less racing team. Clip It here going to be trying to see if they can show to have what it takes to go up with their very seasoned veteran teammates. Of course, we haven't heard Clip It say that their racing line is mid, which we have heard out of the 330 of Lake. So we'll see if this Windows 98 car still has what it takes to show their teammates and, of course, the rest of the field up. Of course, this race takes place in 2003, so a little bit after Windows 98 came out, but you know what? It's still hip, it's still relevant, and maybe that livery will just be what it takes to carry this driver to the front of the field. Coming across the line here, it is going to be a 31.317 for Clip It. Right now, that is only going to be good enough for 13th. Next driver out here on the raceway going to be the Heart of Deimos, 13 of Toaster of the Void. Rookie driver making their debut start in the Clamshell Championship here, but she does have 1 win to her name here in the Ottercar history books as a whole. She was the winner in the LMP2 class and the overall winner of the Daytona 2.4 for the Mustang Le Mans special event. Of course, first ever special event here on the channel, and taking home the win in their debut on the channel is a pretty significant feat. But now the question is going to be, can this driver manage to continue that hot streak of success in the early goings of her career here in these big, heavy Gen 4 stock cars? Of course, nowhere near as light or as nimble as the LMP2 prototype was, so definitely going to be a very different driving experience for this driver, but who knows, maybe she'll show to be good in just about any car we throw at her. Crossing the line, though, going to be a 31.167. That is going to be just enough to put her in the 9th position for the time being. Up next here on the Speedway, going to be the 37 Riot Games entry of Ashley Queen. Of course, not to be confused of Ashley without a last name that we saw run earlier. Also possible to keep note of this driver as being the European Ashley. Going to be making her run here tonight. Of course, another longtime veteran here of the series, and the first of 3 members of the Blazed and Drunk Drivers racing team, who did take home the team championship back in Ottercar's Clamshell Championship season number 2. But of course, last season they only had 3 other teams to compete with here in season number 3, they have 14 other organizations they have to worry about. So we'll see how this group does. Of course, they are the defending champions of the team championship. They have a lot on the line here, but it's going to be some very stiff competition here in season 3 of the Clamshell Championship. Ashley Queen going to be the first driver to set a qualifying time for the Blazed and Drunk Drivers organization, and she's going to be setting it with a 31.328. Unfortunately, that is only going to be good enough for, looks like, 14th on the timing and scoring right now. Next up on the raceway here, going to be the 21 of August here. Another longtime veteran of the series that has been running all the way since the first race back in season number 1 of the Clamshell Championship, and one of a small handful of drivers that has been running here since the beginning and has yet to take home a race win here in Ottercar. As of right now, their best finish here in any season is 4th back in season number 2 and 5th back in season number 1. That said, they did manage to point their way into the playoffs last season, though they were a first-round dropout. So who knows, maybe season number 3 will be the redemption arc of that 21 machine, and maybe we will just see them take home their first ever win of the season. Going down to turns 3 and 4, though, getting up to 152 miles an hour, right around the cap of where we've seen drivers able to get to. Only dropping down to 99 through the corners, though, so a little bit of a better run than we've seen out of some of these other cars. Coming across the line here, going to be a 31.006. That's going to be good enough for second. Next up here on the track is going to be the number 93 of Blue DeWolf in the ASRC Pontiac entry. Blue, another one of those drivers, just like August that we were talking about before, that has yet to take home a win here in the Ottercar Racing Series. Been here from the start, just like August. He does have a couple of second place finishes and a couple of podiums to his name here in the league, but still has yet to take home the coveted checkered flag. Of course, Blue in that Attrition Sim Race Campus entry, Attrition Sim Race Campus being a real human driver league on the iRacing.com platform that he runs. That is the league that I broadcast here on the channel on Monday nights. So technically speaking, he is one of only 2 drivers here in the league that actually has experience behind the wheel of this car on any form of simulator. So we'll see if that experience pays off for the driver of this number 93 machine here in the virtual world as he makes his way across the start-finish line up here. It's looking like it is going to be a 31.260 for him. That is going to be good enough to put him in, looks like, in 9th. As our next driver makes his way out onto the raceway, I do want to reiterate here that if you ever hear something that comes out of my mouth that doesn't sound quite correct, refer to the graphics on your screen here. Those are what's true and correct. I've noticed a couple times here tonight I have misspoken on where drivers have placed on the running order. So be sure to refer to the graphics there because that is what is actually correct. Next driver out here on the speedway, though, is the 38 of Madcap in the McDonald's entry, and that is a driver I think everyone's going to be really keen to keep an eye on. Not only is he a member of Blazed and Drunk Drivers, which took home the team championship last year, but he also took home the individual championship last season in the Clamshell Championship, and on top of that, this very speedway was where he took home his first win. So definitely going to be having to keep an eye on that 38 machine and see how things shake out for him, because he may very well be the first driver to get a repeat win at any given track here in Ottercar racing history. Coming across the line, though, is going to be a 30.999. That will be, once again, good enough to bump the entire field from second on down a spot. Up next here in that Fortnite entry is going to be the 621 of Deeg. This driver debuted back in Season 2 of the Clamshell Championship and had honestly a very, very rough rookie season. One singular top 5 to their name and an average finishing position of 13.2. So we'll see if this driver is going to be able to have a little bit more success here this season. They were involved in pretty much an incident every single race last season, and I'm pretty sure they even were involved in an incident in the race where they got that top 5. Of course, that was the race back at the Oxford Plains Speedway for the Blue Shell 110. I think pretty much every driver in that race got home some sort of incident. But hey, once again, this is a new season, it is a new slate for all these drivers, and we might just see this 621 machine put on a heck of a show here this season and be a little bit further running up in the front. If nothing else, maybe take home a couple of podiums. It's all going to start here with qualifying, though, and as they cross the line, it's going to be a 31.227 for them. That is going to be good enough for 14th. Up next here in the 000 entry is going to be Sarah, another driver who has run here in the Ottercar Clamshell Championship since the very first season. Has run a different number and a different paint scheme every single time, though. Back in the first season, she was in the 117 entry, then in season 2, the 777 entry, now here in the 000 entry. Has one win to her name so far on the channel. She took home a win back at Martinsville in season number 1 as a bit of an upset win. The two race leaders wrecked each other out with, I think, about maybe 15 to go, and with a late race restart, she was able to sail ahead and took home her one and only win so far here in Ottercar racing history. Maybe she will go for number 2 here in season 3 of Clamshell Championship competition. So far, looking pretty good around the speedway here. Has some pretty decent amount of speed coming across the line at about 143. It's going to be a 31.118 for the driver of the 000 entry. That is going to be enough to put her in 9th. Next up here on the speedway in that number 1 entry is going to be Med, another driver that has been out here in the series since the very beginning, and another driver that has yet to take home a win here on the channel. Running this season for the team just called Dickmaster. From what I understand, that is less of a team and more of a title for this driver, but regardless, it is shared by themselves and Sarkin, who we've yet to see qualify here. And both of these drivers have put that down as a team to run in the team championship, and you know what? Good enough for me, I guess. I'm just the broadcaster. We'll see what this team has to offer here in this season, though. Of course, they have 14 other teams to compete against. Some taking this thing perhaps a little bit more seriously than others, but they're all out here on the speedway. They're all competing to win one way or another. And we will see how this first driver for that team is able to stack up against their competitors. Crossing the line here, going to be a 31.178. Looks like that will be just about good enough for 14th. Getting into our final 10 drivers remaining to qualify here for the Suncook Lake 100. Here we have the number 89 Total War entry of Ash, not to be confused with Ash with an E in the 111 machine. This driver is another driver that's been competing since the very beginning of the Clamshell Championship, though they were formerly known as Stick for the first season before changing their name to what it is now. Couple of podium finishes and a couple of runner-up finishes for this driver, as well as one win back in Season 2 of the Clamshell Championship. Along with that, they did manage to make it into the round of 8 of the playoffs last season. Of course, this 89 driver is the Dragon half of Fen Dragon Motorsports, running alongside the rookie driver of Dirt. So we'll see how this veteran and rookie duo manage to shake things out here this season. So far, so good here at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Fortunately, no one's had any incidences here in qualifying. It's all been pretty solid runs. And speaking of solid runs, going to be a 31.105 for Ash. That is going to be good enough to be putting him in the 8th position for the time being. Next up here to qualify is going to be a rookie driver of questionable legal and moral standing. It's going to be the solo car team entry of the Clown College, today being driven by Gafal the Third. I think at this point we're really just letting anyone into Ottercar here at this rate. I don't think this person has a valid license or is really allowed behind the wheel of any sort of vehicle, much less a race car. Regardless, they're here and they're already turning a qualifying time, so I guess we're not necessarily going to stop them. Definitely interested to see what this rookie driver is able to pull off and if they'll even be able to make the minimum speed requirement to be out here on the track. Looking up at this speedometer right now, it's up to 151 just about going down into the corner. So they're going fast enough, I suppose, but I still really don't know why we let this person out here on the track. We'll see what happens when they cross the line, though. It's going to be a 31.159. That's going to be just good enough for 12th for the time being here for this Clown College entry. Next driver out here on the Speedway, it's another rookie driver in their debut start here with the league. It's going to be the number 33 of Dale Themhart. Not quite sure if the Raise Hell Praise Dale on their car necessarily refers to praising themselves or a different Dale or what quite is going on here, but regardless, they are here on the raceway and they will be doing their best to raise hell one way or another, regardless of who it's for. Did seem like they were having maybe a little bit of trouble getting up to speed here, but it does seem like they're doing all right now, at least so far for the time being. I don't know, something just sounds slightly off about the engine sounds of that race car. I might just be losing my mind here at this rate, because they are still cresting out at 152 miles an hour going down into the corner. But something definitely did not sound quite right under the hood of that 33 machine as they were getting warmed up. Regardless, though, they're going to come across the line here at 141 miles an hour, and that's going to be a 31.410 for them. So yeah, definitely something wrong under the hood of that machine, because that is going to be bumping them down to the last place on the track by several thousandths of a second here. Next driver out to qualify here is going to be one of the only other drivers here in the Ottercar Clamshell Championship that has actual sim racing experience behind the wheel of one of these cars. It's going to be the Impact Racing Products number 52 of Garrett Hess here, making their debut with the Ottercar AI Racing Series as a whole. Another driver that is not new to my channel as a whole, though, is they are a regular competitor in the ASRC Oval Series alongside Flutie Wolf in the actual driver iRacing League on Monday nights. So another driver that I'm definitely curious to see how they will do here in the AI Racing Series. Running in a single car team here this season for Team Mopar. So we'll have to see how they manage to shake up. Not the only single car team here this season. There's actually a pretty decent handful of them. But I'll tell you what, this is probably one of the most official looking cars we have here on the track. Well, coming across the line here, it's going to be a 31.221. That's only going to be enough for, looks like about 18th for that driver. So maybe having one of the most official looking race cars doesn't really help with speed under the hood. Next out here on the raceway, going to be the 818 Cryptid Command entry of MF Beatus. Who knows what MF stands for, if it's initials for a name or it's all one word or what all is going on here. But they are a returning driver from Season 2 of the Clamshell Championship, running the same pattern of paint as last season, but with some new sponsors on the side here. Of course, Cryptid Command and Minecraft, new sponsors for this driver. They were solely sponsored by Logitech last season. Took home a single win at the Kills You Corner 75 at the Charlotte Roval last season. Aside from that, has never once finished inside of the top 5. But they've demonstrated that they can win races, so maybe if they have a stroke of luck here in the early goings of season number 3, we might just see this driver be playoff material here. But as they have a little bit of a hiccup going through turns 3 and 4 there, it looks like a little bit of a slide. That might mess them up here on their qualifying lap. We'll see what they get when they cross the line. A 31.310. That is only going to be good enough for 23rd place. So not quite how this driver wants to be starting their season off. Getting within our final 5 drivers left to qualify here for the Suncook Lake 100. We have another rookie driver coming out here on the Speedway, and actually the final rookie driver left to qualify. It's going to be the 22 of Cozy here this evening. One of the drivers running for Paul Gang Bottom Text here this season. Definitely curious to see how they do here in Season 3 of the Clamshell Championship, considering they only got into motorsports pretty much a month or so prior to actually showing up to this race. So definitely quite the rapid progression of events from only finding out that NASCAR is cool to being behind the wheel of a race car over the period of only a little bit over 30 days. But you know what? Here we are. We'll see how this driver manages to fare against these longtime veterans of the series, and of course a lot of new drivers here as well. Both of her teammates are full-time veterans of the series, so if nothing else, she has some folks to learn off of. Coming across the line though, going to be a 31.201. That is going to be good enough for 18th for the time being for this rookie driver. Now down to our final 4 drivers left to qualify. It's going to be the 776 taking to the Speedway now. Valnar here, the final member of the Blazed and Drunk Drivers organization, left to set a qualifying time here this evening. Valnar only has 1 win to his name so far here on the channel, back at the Myrtle Beach Speedway in Season 1. But that 1 win is all it takes for the Blazed and Drunk Drivers team to say that every single one of their drivers has won races here in the Ottercar Clamshell Championship. Valnar has also gotten a couple of other poles parting positions in other races here on the channel, just only has that 1 win to his name so far here. So we'll see if he manages to take home win number 2 at some point here this season, and maybe he will take home another podium to start the race off before he makes it happen. Once again, looking like a little bit of a wiggle coming through turn 3 and 4 here, so we'll see how that affects his time here. Coming across the line, it is going to be a 31.204 for the driver of the 776. That is going to be only good enough for 19th. Next up here in the 111 entry is going to be Ashamati in that food court entry. A very well-seasoned driver here on the channel that has multiple wins and multiple top 5 finishes here in both seasons of Ottercar Clamshell Championship competition. Came all the way down into the round of 4 in the playoffs back in Ottercar season number 2, but just came up a little bit short in actually clinching the championship, but still had a very solid run. Unfortunately, had a very rough time in the Mustelli Mons Daytona 2.4 special event, but you know what? It seems like maybe racing ovals is just more his thing, so we'll keep an eye on him here this season, see what he's able to pull off. Of course, part of the Newport Dual Disc team together with Prince Kelfami, which is, of course, a rookie driver here this season. So we'll see just what this 111 is able to do and maybe teach that rookie driver running alongside him a couple of new tricks. It's going to be a 31.146 across the line for him, though. That is going to be good enough for... looks like it's going to be 12th for Ashamati. Next up out here onto the raceway is going to be the Discover South Carolina number 271 of Felix Mare out here. Felix ran here in season number 1 of the Clamshell Championship, took home 1 win back in that season, then decided to take a hiatus back in season number 2, now making a re-emergence here in season 3 as a member of Paul Gang Bottom Text. Felix running a new paint scheme from what he ran back in season number 1. Back in season 1 was unsponsored here in Ottercar, but actually using a very similar color palette to what we saw him back in the Tour Modifieds back when he drove in the 217 machine. So who knows, maybe a new coat of paint and a new number will do some luck for this driver, or maybe he will end up being a one-hit wonder just like he was back in season number 1. Time will have to tell for the driver of the 271 machine. Coming across the line though, going to be taking home a 30.992. That is going to be good enough to put him in second place overall. And finally, our last qualifier for the Suncook Lake 100 here this evening, going to be the 99 New South Wales Transport entry of Sarkin. Last but certainly not least here in the field. Looking like he might have a little bit of difficulty here on power getting up to speed here, seeming to have a little bit of the same issue that we saw with Dale Demhart earlier on in qualifying. We'll see how this driver is able to do, but they're kind of struggling to get up above 100 miles per hour through the corners here. Now heading down the back straightaway, doing a little bit better, but definitely something is not right under the hood of that number 99 machine, so we'll see how he manages to complete this lap here, but it is not looking particularly great for him. Getting up to speed here down the back straightaway, now a little bit better, but still definitely that hiccup we saw as he was getting up to speed has me a bit worried here. Going out turn number 4, coming across the start-finish line, only going to be good enough for a 31.052. So that is going to be good enough to put him in 7th. So all in all, actually not that bad, despite that little bit of an issue we saw with him having initially coming out of the pits here. So that is just about going to wrap up qualifying here for the Suncook Lake 100. Of course, 75 lap event coming up later today at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Your front runner is going to be Frosty C and Felix Marais, followed by Madcap and August for the second row. That's going to be Dirt and Ashley for row number 3, followed by Sarkin and Thirds in 7th and 8th to make up row 4. Row 5 going to be Pav and Ash, rounding out the top 10 starting order here. Then it's going to be Sarah and Sam Houston back in row number 6. Row 7 going to be Ash Amati and Gafal the third, with Drop Table Roster and Toaster of the Void being row number 8. Row 9 going to be Ame Sakuramori and Mint_777, followed by row 10 with Med and Rally. Then for row 11, it's going to be Cozy and Valnar in 21st and 22nd respectively. Then in row 12, it'll be Garrett Hess and Zoe. Row 13 going to be Bloody Wolf and Deeg, followed by Lake and MF Beatus in row 14. Row 15 going to be Clippet and Ashley Queen, with row 16 being Eclacy and Prince Calfame. Then row number 17 going to be Dale Demhart all by themselves at the tail end of the field. Of course, these car drivers will be having opportunities to work on their cars between now and when the race goes green flag racing later here today at 3 p.m. So hopefully some of these drivers that had issues here in qualifying will be able to get some of the things sorted out and worked out here in their cars here before we get things rolling off later today. But for now though, thank you all for tuning in here to qualifying, and I look forward to seeing y'all again here in just a couple of hours for the running of the Suncook Lake 100 opening race to Ottercar's Clamshell Championship season number 3. Bound to be quite an exciting one. For now though, thank y'all for tuning in, and I will see y'all later.